टैक्सेशन बेनिफिट के लिए आप कोई प्रोडक्ट में निवेश नहीं करेंगे, जो आमतौर से हिस्टोरिकली हमारी चॉइस होती थी, क्योंकि टैक्स हर इंसान बचाना चाहता है। अब आप निवेश उस चीज में करेंगे जो अच्छा प्रोडक्ट है और जो आपके लिए अच्छा है। हाल ही में हुए हुए बजट में यू वुड हैव सीन वेदर इट इज मार्केट लिंक्ड डिबेंचर्स, मेनी इंश्योरेंस प्रोडक्ट्स इन द गाइज ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट्स, इनके जो टैक्सेशन आर्बिट्राजेस थे ये बंद हो गए हैं। सो नाउ इट इज इन्वेस्टमेंट ऑन मेरिट, जो कि मेरे हिसाब से बुरी चीज नहीं है। आई थिंक एज एन म्यूचुअल फंड इंडस्ट्री I have no ask as an industry for taxation because now there is parity. आप equity में निवेश करते हैं, you have 10% taxation, which is a very good rate of taxation. आप debt mutual fund में निवेश करते हैं, you are far better off than an FD. तो I think हमारी इंडस्ट्री में सब कुछ है। एक मेरी अगर विश होगी कि जैसे यूएस में 401 के प्रोग्राम हो गया है जिसमें टैक्स इंसेंटिव्स मिलते हैं रिटायरमेंट की सेविंग्स के लिए, अगर हमारी इंडस्ट्री को वो मिल जाए तो वो एक बहुत अच्छी चीज होगी।
Thank you, Radhika ma'am, for sparing the time from your busy schedule and gracing this occasion. Over to Gaurav.
शुक्रिया सर, शुक्रिया राधिका जी। फाइनेंशियल सिक्योरिटी के मुद्दे पर आपकी राय हम सभी के लिए बहुत बहुमूल्य है। और अब मैं TV9 के एडिटर बिजनेस एंड इकोनॉमी, TV9 नेटवर्क के एडिटर एंड बिजनेस एंड इकोनॉमी मिस्टर राकेश खार से आग्रह करूंगा कि प्लीज वो मंच पर आएं और राधिका जी को सम्मानित करें। एक जोरदार तालियों के साथ स्वागत हो मैम का। और इस बीच आपको यह भी बता दूं कि Money9 का ये फाइनेंशियल फ्रीडम समिट Money9 के मोबाइल ऐप्स पर, TV9 नेटवर्क और Money9 के नेटवर्क के YouTube, Facebook चैनलों पर भी पूरे देश में पहुंच रहा है और बड़ी संख्या में हमारे साथ लोग जुड़ रहे हैं। और आप भी Money9 ऐप प्लीज डाउनलोड करें और अपना फीडबैक भी हमें जरूर पहुंचाएं, क्योंकि Money9 के जरिए हमारा जो आज का मोटो है वो यही है कि फाइनेंशियल फ्रीडम मिले। जैसा कि अभी राधिका जी ने बताया कि कैसे हर घर SIP बहुत जल्द हमारी जनरेशन में हम देखेंगे। सवाल वही है कि इसको कैसे लोगों तक पहुंचाया जाए, और उसी मंथन पर जुटा हुआ है यहाँ पर TV9 नेटवर्क, और हम लगातार उसी पर बात करते हुए, क्योंकि मुंबई आने का मकसद यही है। देश की आर्थिक राजधानी है, देश की आर्थिक राजधानी से जुड़े हुए तमाम बड़े लोग, बड़ी हस्तियां, बड़े चेहरे यहाँ पर मौजूद हैं, और उनसे इंटरेक्शन करके, उनसे मंथन करके, उनसे चर्चा करके हम वही वो अमृत कलश निकालना चाहते हैं जो इस वक्त सबसे जरूरी है देश की फाइनेंशियल फ्रीडम के लिए, फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन के लिए। हर घर तक, हर शख्स तक जो सोच है कैसे उनको वित्तीय समावेश में शामिल किया जाए, वित्तीय समावेश किया जाए उनका, वो इस वक्त की जो सोच है।
Created a special memento for ma'am, clicking her photo and putting it for a graphic, and that process is taking a bit long. I think madam has to leave. I'll send this memento to your office and deliver it. There's a special memento that is they're getting, and there's a bit time on the printing.
Thank you ma'am. Thanks a lot for coming. A huge round of applause for ma'am. Please जोरदार तालियों के साथ मैम का एक बार फिर से स्वागत करते हैं हम सब। चलिए अब इस कार्यक्रम के पहले एक्सपर्ट पैनल सेशन की शुरुआत करते हैं। सरकार ने 2047 तक देश के हर नागरिक को बीमा कवर के दायरे में लाने का लक्ष्य रखा है, और इस विशेष सत्र में अब हमारे साथ होंगे भारत के बीमा उद्योग से जुड़ी जानी मानी हस्तियां और विशेषज्ञ। इस पैनल की मॉडरेटर होंगी Money9 की पर्सनल फाइनेंस एडिटर प्रियंका संभव, और मैं प्रियंका से आग्रह करता हूं कि वो स्टेज पर आए और उनके साथ पैनल में जो चर्चा के लिए जो डिस्टिंग्विश्ड पैनल है, जो लोग हैं, उनको भी साथ में लाए। हमारे साथ जुड़े हैं Edelweiss टोक्यो लाइफ इंश्योरेंस के कार्यकारी निदेशक सुब्रजीत मुखोपाध्याय, बजाज कैपिटल इंश्योरेंस के CEO वेंकटेश नायडू, सर्टिफाइड फाइनेंस प्लानर हर्ष रुंगटा और मणिपाल सिग्ना की CEO प्रिया देशमुख। मैं आप सभी का तहे दिल से बहुत जोरदार स्वागत करता हूं और चाहता हूं कि आप हमारे तमाम जो यहाँ पर गेस्ट बैठे हुए हैं, हमारे तमाम मेहमानों का एक बार फिर से स्वागत करें। और प्रियंका, क्योंकि अब आपके हवाले है ये स्टेज, प्लीज आप संभाले कमान यहां से। प्रियंका, मैं चाहूंगा तब तक आप हमारे व्यूअर्स को कुछ बताइए कि आपका ये जो आज का ये जो सेशन है, एक्सपर्ट पैनल सेशन, ये क्यों खास है?
क्या मेरी आवाज आ रही है? Okay, great. So my आवाज is reaching to all of you. Thank you so much. My guests are here. Thank you, Gaurav.
Thank you.
बीमा पर बात करना जरूरी है क्योंकि हम सब सोचते हैं कि ये बहुत जरूरी प्रोडक्ट है, पर फिर भी हम नहीं खरीदते। और शायद मैं और आप दिल्ली और मुंबई में रहकर, और यहाँ पर जितने लोग हैं वो बीमा समझते हैं, खरीदते हैं, लेकिन अभी भी जो हमारे टियर 2 और टियर 3 शहर हैं वहाँ तक बीमा समझना इम्पोर्टेंट है, पर क्यों नहीं खरीद रहे? इसी पर मंथन करते
प्लीज
समझते हैं।
ऑल योर्स।
Mic, please. One more mic, please. Can I get one more mic, please? Coming. Thank you so much, all of you, for taking out time. Monday, this is not Monday, this is a Wednesday afternoon and Mumbai traffic. And you guys have come, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Insurance is something which is very close to my heart. And I'm sure it is very close to all of you because I have some way or the other interacted with all of you. And I think it has been a very important part. We've conducted a personal finance survey and I want to show what came out of that when we spoke to people and asked them about insurance. Let's have a look at that.
Here's Sanjay. He's a software engineer from Mumbai. Sanjay is savvy. He invests in insurance to create a secure future for himself and his parents. That's why he has 6 to 7 insurance policies. But Sanjay belongs to a minority. And why is that? Look at the government data. It says insurance penetration in India is only 4%. And our own Money9 personal finance survey shows that just 19% of families buy insurance for savings. The number is higher in rich states like Karnataka and Maharashtra, but not in poorer economies like Bihar and Jharkhand. But the overall trend is worrying. It shows that India believes in saving more than ensuring a secure future. It's only if more people follow Sanjay's example and invest in insurance that the future is likely to be secure. If you want to learn how, then the panel on insurance at the Financial Freedom Summit, hosted by TV9 Network and Money9, is what you should tune into.
बीमा पर मैं हमेशा एक बात कहती हूँ, ये ना निवेश है, ना बचत है, ना खर्चा है, ना टैक्स सेविंग का जरिया है, लेकिन हम सब बीमा को यही समझते हैं, ये निवेश है। हमारे सर्वे में भी यही पता चला कि लोगों को लगता है कि इंश्योरेंस मतलब फिनेंशियल सेविंग, और ये सेविंग नहीं है बल्कि आपके जीवन के सुरक्षा कवच है जिसकी बहुत आपको जरूरत पड़ेगी जब आपका बुरा वक्त होगा, चाहे वो जीवन का बुरा वक्त हो या स्वास्थ्य का बुरा वक्त हो। कोविड ने बहुत हद तक समझाया हमें कि बीमा कितना जरूरी है। फिर भी जब हम IRDA के वो आंकड़े देखते हैं जिससे इंडस्ट्री तो वाकिफ है कि इंश्योरेंस पेनिट्रेशन सिर्फ 4.2% का है, जबकि पिछले 10 साल में इंश्योरेंस इंडस्ट्री में हमने 10% का ग्रोथ एवरेज मैं लेकर चल रही हूँ देखा है। अराउंड 57 इंश्योरेंस कंपनियां हैं, लेकिन फिर भी क्या ये लोगों तक पहुंच पा रहे हैं और कहाँ नहीं पहुंच पा रहे हैं? और ऐसे में 2047 का इंश्योरेंस फॉर ऑल का गोल का लक्ष्य हम कैसे अचीव करेंगे इंश्योरेंस फॉर ऑल? So let's start the discussion with my esteemed panelists because I think they would throw in more light than me. Priya, thank you so much for being here. Since you belong to Manipal Signa Health, I want to understand from you, as far as health insurance is concerned, the biggest issue is the out-of-pocket expenditure which an Indian has to go through. What is stopping the Indians from buying health insurance? Why is the health insurance penetration so low? Because when I spoke about 4.2 penetration of insurance, it had both life and general. And when we see standalone health insurance penetration, it's around 1%, little bit above 1%.
Right.
So what is it that, why are Indians not buying? What is it that is stopping Indians from buying health insurance?
Sure, great. Thank you, TV9, and thank you to you. We've been part of multiple conversations over the last couple of years. And indeed, such a powerful vision to have health insurance for every citizen of India by 2047. underpinned with the fact that insurance penetration has been low, especially for non-life, as you rightly said. And a couple of factors. ये कोविड में हमने देखा, कोविड में कैसे expenses हुए, health care के expenses बढ़े, बहुत सारे लोग जो upper middle class, other people who had good financial kind of standing, they suffered during the time of COVID with the kind of claim size, the amount of expenses that were made. So हम हमेशा सोचते हैं, हमने बात भी करी, पहले भी आपने बात करी है, 60 to 75% of the total expenses are out of pocket. तो इंडिया क्यों नहीं खरीद रहा? क्या challenges हैं? इसमें सबसे बहुत बड़ा एक challenge mindset. बेसिकली आज मैं हेल्दी हूँ, मुझे इंश्योरेंस की क्या ज़रूरत है, मैं घर खरीद लेता हूँ, मैं गाड़ी लेता हूँ, मैं बाकी सारी इन्वेस्टमेंट्स करता हूँ. So people are not realizing the importance कि you are fit today, and God forbid everybody should remain fit. But when that health and health issue will strike, that awareness and that knowledge and that ability to really have that visibility कि क्या हो सकता है, so awareness drive करने की ज़रूरत है. Second factor is trust. Third factor is basically most importantly कि मैंने पैसे तो दिए इंश्योरेंस के, लेकिन मुझे रिटर्न में कुछ नहीं मिला साल भर में. That kind of a thought process is also really holding it back. So I would say trust deficit from the standpoint that कि मैंने पैसे लगाए और वापस कुछ नहीं आया. वो thought process थोड़ा मतलब awareness increase करने की ज़रूरत है. अभी insurance is not only about falling sick, going back into hospital, it is also about fit care, it is also about wellness. आपकी सारी डॉक्टर की बिल्स जो हैं, आपके सारे फिटनेस केयर का जो भी एक्सपेंसेस हैं, वो सारा सब कुछ इंश्योरेंस आजकल कवर करता है. बहुत सारे प्रोडक्ट्स हैं जो सिर्फ हॉस्पिटल के बिल्स नहीं, ओपीडी, आपके डॉक्टर कंसल्टेशन, डेंटल दिस थिंग, टेलीमेडिसिन फॉर दैट मैटर, बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं जो इंक्लूसिव इट कम्स अंडर द इंश्योरेंस कवर. इट्स ऑल अबाउट अवेयरनेस.
प्रोडक्ट्स की कमी नहीं है, लेकिन अंडरस्टैंडिंग की कमी है.
पिछले 10 साल में बहुत नए प्रोडक्ट्स हैं, especially last 5 years with the changes in regulation, regulator being so pro customer, बहुत सारे positive changes हैं, awareness की ज़रूरत है.
Mr. Naidu, I would come to you with my next question. As Priya pointed out, there are a lot of product. In fact, the entire last year we saw regulator taking lots of such steps wherein a use and file was introduced, So all of you got a lot of flexibility in bringing out new and innovative product. If there are product, and there is a need for insurance, why are people still not buying insurance? Do you think they're buying? What is your take?
Okay, I think, thank you for this question, Priyanka. I think it's a very interesting gathering that we have put together, and congratulations on your DataCoin app. Okay, very quickly, the life insurance penetration is under 4% today, 4.2%. And if we were to really look at this figure a little deeper, the penetration in non-metro market is even starkly down.
Absolutely.
It is
That's
under
what I
1%.
pointed out, yeah.
Okay. So what are the big challenges? What are the big challenges? One, I think today insurance and simplicity don't go with each other. Okay. So insurance product baat karte hi, for a people find it highly complicated. They think that ye hame samajh mein nahi aa raha hai, right? So product simplicity is one aspect that I would like to touch upon. Number two is distribution. Okay, how are we reaching out to these customers to go ahead and provide them the right solution? Today, with the entire advent of digital, there's a major digital explosion that is happening. But are people willing to engage digitally to buy insurance? Or are they looking at a phygital model with a physical and digital enterprise, right? So product simplicity, product reach, in terms of going deeper into markets, and product variety. If you just look at insurance companies today, everybody is now in the same garb of providing similar products, okay? A product which is very, very suitable to a Sanjay kind of individual, right, in metro. Is it, the same product which is great for a Suresh kind of individual in deep, district, okay? So I think all these aspects, I think have to be addressed one by one. I think there's a significant progress that's happened in the market in the last 10 years, like Priya is saying. The regulator is, pushing the insurers, easing the regulations through use and file to create better, simpler, easily understandable, affordable products. I think there's a great movement that's happening, but there's still a long way to go, as far as the penetration is concerned. Now with the new advent, Har Ghar insurance by 2047, the kind of trust that the now regulator is putting in, truly the developmental role in terms of actually giving out targets to insurance companies, okay, and giving boost to distribution intermediaries in terms of giving licenses, 9 people, you know,
They're
9
still
different
on
insurance
papers.
companies,
They've
a lot
still
of
not
things.
passed the bill yet. I mean,
Yeah,
it's still in
but
the process.
I think great, you know, draft regulations have come in, and we have known the regulator
But the
by
draft
now.
proposals will remain to be draft unless it turns out into
Priyanka, look at the number of drafts that have come in the last, it's a contentious topic.
Yeah.
Look at the number of drafts that have come in. Shubro is here, Priya is here, everybody is here. Look at the number of drafts that's come in the last 5 years, and tell me the number of drafts that have not been passed. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's a contentious
this debate
topic.
is a totally different. I would bring in Shubhrajit here as well. Shubhrajit, you tell me, I mean, as Venkatesh and Priya pointing out, there are lots of things that needs to be done. But what is it that you see, one thing you think this should be sorted out first and foremost, and so that you could achieve the goal of insurance for all?
I think 2047 insurance for all is a very aspirational goal, and we all strive for that. No doubt about that. But it's easier said than done, and you all need to work very coherently towards that. I think let's go back to the first principle, why people don't buy insurance. I think they have touched upon that. I will go a little deeper onto that. That it's a product which doesn't give you instant gratification. We as a consumer tend to get something which gives us a gratification. You invest in FD, you invest in MF, you will get something in return. The return may vary from 4, 5, 6 to 10, 11, 12, something in return. The payoff in insurance is extremely asymmetric. I will give an example. By the way, India is one of the most competitive global market in terms of term insurance product. I think the price in India is one of the competitive in the global level. If you pay, and it depends on the age and tenure of the policy, if you pay 20 to 30K, you get a 1 crore of insurance coverage. See the asymmetry in the payoff, 25, 30K and 1 crore. But still, if we think that, by the way, if nothing happens to the person, nothing will be returned, and that return, because it's either at less 25, 30,000 gone, or you get a 1 crore, extremely asymmetry. This requires a deep financial understanding, culture, education, and financial literacy. So any foundation of a financial planning, that's everybody knows here that insurance is the foundation of a financial planning you do. But just saying that wouldn't suffice. I think, and I'm very glad that you are organizing sessions. This kind of a session, awareness at a school level, to my mind, all the bodies coming together, all the ecosystem coming together, government, regulatory, industry, all need to work together to achieve the goal. And I personally have a strong belief, I am very passionate also, that it is possible if all we come together and start with educating ourselves. Now, so to my mind, that there will be obstacles in the journey, but if we work together and figure out, I think there's a lot of product propositions, currently there is a plethora of products. I think the key is to make ourselves more aware. I will give an example how in the COVID period it has turned the way. It has opened the eye actually. Industry, I just wanted to quote a number, industry has settled 78,000 crores of, life insurance industry settled 78,000 crores of claims. And think about the person who, by the way, deciding to take a spend 25K for a 1 crore, finally decided to take a 25 crore, and something has happened to the family. His family is financially set.
Absolutely. So that's one thing, the lack of understanding of the product and the return aspect जो शुभजीत ने कहा कि हमें return क्या मिलेगा अगर हम खरीद रहे हैं इंश्योरेंस, ये एक बहुत ही बेसिक सा सवाल है जो लोग पूछते हैं, और मुझे लगता है अगर उनको ये समझा दिया जाए कि ये रिटर्न आपके लिए नहीं है, अगर आपको कुछ हो जाता है तो आपकी फैमिली के लिए है, अगर आप बीमार पड़ जाते हैं तो आपको उधार लेकर के आप उधार के जाल में ना फंस जाए, उसके लिए ये समझ जो है वो लोगों तक पहुंचनी जरूरी है। हम Money9 और TV9 के अलग अलग प्लेटफॉर्म में अभी लाइव हैं, हमारे लाइव ऑडियंस में अगर कुछ सवाल पूछेंगे तो हम उन्हें भी शामिल करेंगे। पर अब मैं जाना चाहूंगी सर्टिफाइड फाइनेंशियल प्लानर आर्या के हेड हर्ष रुंगटा जी के पास, और इनके साथ तो बीमा पर मेरी इतनी सारी बातें हुई हैं। अब रुंगटा सर, बीमा पर हम बहुत सारी बातें करते हैं, लेकिन आप बताइए क्या है सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज? मुझे लगता है भारत में, जैसे इन्होंने अभी कहा ना कि रिटर्न नहीं मिलता, वैसे ही एक समस्या है कि हम जब भी कुछ खरीदने जाते हैं ना तो हम थोड़ा सा बार्गेन करना चाहते हैं, हमें लगता है हमें जिस प्राइस पर बेचा जा रहा है वो ठीक नहीं है। कॉस्ट ऑफ इंश्योरेंस इज ऑल्सो एन वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट रुंगटा सर। आपको लगता नहीं है कि हम ज्यादा लोगों तक पहुंचने के लिए बीमा को और सस्ता होने की जरूरत है?
पहली बात तो धन्यवाद यहाँ बुलाने के लिए और आई थिंक ये मंच देने के लिए। और मेरा इंश्योरेंस इंडस्ट्री से डायरेक्टली कोई कनेक्शन नहीं है, लेकिन इंश्योरेंस बहुत ही अहम हिस्सा होता है कोई भी किसी भी आदमी के लिए उसकी फिनेंशियल प्लानिंग में, और उस तहत से बहुत ज़्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट है हमारे लिए। कॉस्ट की अभी आपने बात करी तो आई एम एक्चुअली अमेज्ड, ओके, कि इंश्योरेंस इंडस्ट्री ने कॉस्ट में इतना काम किया है। ओके, जैसे अभी कहा कि 30,000 रुपये में आपको 1 करोड़ की इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसीज, टर्म इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसी मिल रही है। और ये इन्होंने बिल्कुल सही कहा, हम इंटरनेशनली कॉम्पिटिटिव हैं। हमारे NRI क्लाइंट्स हैं जो सो कॉल्ड विकसित देशों में रहते हैं, वो आके यहाँ आके उनको पॉलिसी जब लेनी होती है उनको इंडिया में रहना होता है, तो एक इंडिया में जब आते हैं तो वो टर्म पॉलिसी भी लेते हैं और हेल्थ पॉलिसी भी लेते हैं। तो ऑब्वियसली हम वैल्यू फॉर मनी दे रहे हैं, तभी वो पॉलिसीज बिक रही हैं।
लेकिन सर मेरा सवाल है कि NRI आकर के अगर खरीद रहे हैं तो उनकी जेब, उनकी कमाई एक इंदौर में रहने वाले सुरेश या एक बैंगलोर में रहने वाले रमन के मुकाबले बहुत ज्यादा होगी। वो रमन और सुरेश तक हम बीमा पहुंचा पा रहे हैं क्या?
वही मैं कह रहा था कि मेरे ख्याल से ये जो एक इम्पोर्टेंस है कि बीमा, जैसे इंश्योरेंस फॉर ऑल बाय 2047, ये कैसे मेजर करेंगे? तो इसका मेजरमेंट मेरे ख्याल से जो इंश्योरेंस इंडस्ट्री यूज कर रही है, और मैं कई सालों से ये सवाल पूछ रहा हूं, मुझे आज तक इसका जवाब मिला नहीं, कि व्हाई आर वी मेजरिंग प्रीमियम टू GDP एज पेनिट्रेशन? ओके, प्रीमियम आपने इतना कम कर दिया, ओके, टर्म पॉलिसीज बेचने लग गए, प्रीमियम कम हो गया, लोग ज्यादा दिन जीने लग गए, लॉन्गलेविटी टेबल्स बढ़ गए, प्रीमियम कम हो गया, ज्यादा लोग पॉलिसीज लेने लग गए, हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस लेने लग गए, तो जैसे जैसे बेस बढ़ता है प्रीमियम कम हो गया। तो आपने बहुत अच्छा काम किया, प्रीमियम कम हो गया, रिफ्लेक्ट नहीं करता है पेनिट्रेशन नंबर्स में। क्यों? क्योंकि एक्चुअली वो बता रहा है कि पेनिट्रेशन कम हो गया, जबकि आपको जो करना था, मेन काम इंश्योरेंस इंडस्ट्री का क्या है, आई थिंक वो डिसाइड नहीं कर पा रही है। सुरक्षा प्रदान करना ये मेन काम है कि सेविंग्स जुटाना, और ये दोनों के बीच की जो कश्मकश है, इसको ये सॉल्व नहीं कर पा रहे। आई थिंक दे हैव डन अ फैबुलस जॉब। जैसे सभी ने कहा, प्रोटेक्शन के लिए पिछले 5, 7, 10 सालों में पहले जो एक ट्रस्ट डेफिसिट हुआ करता था कि इंश्योरेंस यानी प्रीमियम दो, क्लेम नहीं मिलेगा। आई थिंक हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस में खास करके ये बहुत ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम थी। टर्म में तो क्लेम्स ज्यादा होते नहीं है, लेकिन वो पिछले 5-7 सालों में उसमें बहुत काम हुआ है और वो चीजें काफी हद तक सॉल्व हुई हैं। लेकिन चूंकि इंडस्ट्री सही स्टैटिस्टिक पे फोकस नहीं कर रही, व्हाई कांट वी, आई मीन सिंपल सा एग्जांपल है, आप समझिए अगर भारत में 2 ही लोग हैं, टोटली 2 ही लोग हैं, ओके, दोनों की इनकम 5 लाख है, उसमें से एक ने ले ली पॉलिसी, 50 लाख की पॉलिसी ले ली, उसके 50 लाख की पॉलिसी के 15,000 रुपए लगे, तो 15,000 डिवाइडेड बाय लेट्स अज्यूम 1 करोड़ है, तो वो 0.15% उसका पेनिट्रेशन हो गया हमारे करंट मानके से, ओके, और उसको उसका डेंसिटी लो तो वो वैसे हो गया। अगले साल पॉलिसी की कीमत आधी हो गई, जो कि हुई है, ओके, और दोनों ने ले ली। तो जो काम करना था वो इंश्योरेंस इंडस्ट्री ने कर दिया।
समझ गई। आप कह रहे हो कि पेनिट्रेशन को हम जिस चश्मे से देख रहे हैं उस चश्मे को बदलने की जरूरत है, राइट?
और इंडस्ट्री को डिसाइड करना पड़ेगा कि उसका मेन काम प्रोटेक्शन देना है कि सेविंग्स करना है और वो डिसाइड नहीं कर पा रही।
फाइन,
ये वेरी क्लियर।
इंडस्ट्री के जो बैठे हैं मेरे साथ स्पोक्स पर्सन, और स्पोक्स पर्सन ही नहीं, बड़ी बड़ी कंपनियों को हेड कर रहे हैं ये लोग, इनसे ही पूछते हैं। प्रिया, आपको क्या लगता है कि क्या हम जिस आईने से देख रहे हैं कि ये है पेनिट्रेशन, वो गलत है? क्योंकि यही बात यहाँ पे रुंगटा सर उठा है।
हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस में वो प्रॉब्लम नहीं है।
या आप लाइफ इंश्योरेंस की बात
ये
कर
लाइफ
रहे हैं।
इंश्योरेंस।
आपको क्या लगता है क्या किए जाने की जरूरत
नहीं
है?
तो बहुत बढ़िया उम्दा कॉन्वर्सेशन। बेसिकली कोई भी क्लास ऑफ इंश्योरेंस अब हम देखें तो अफोर्डेबिलिटी इज अ वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कंसिडरेशन फॉर अ सिटीजन ऑफ इंडिया। तो वो तो एकदम सही बोल रहे हैं सर। बट द फैक्ट इज मैं नॉन लाइफ हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस की बात करूंगी। आई रिप्रेजेंट द हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस इंडस्ट्री। ओवर द इयर्स हमारा काम क्या है? हमारा काम है रिस्क कोहॉर्ट्स बनाना, एक स्टैंडर्ड, कोई कंडीशंस हैं, कोई कंडीशंस नहीं हैं, उस हिसाब से रिस्क कोहॉर्ट्स बनाना, उसको प्राइस करना, उस हिसाब से प्राइसिंग प्रीमियम्स रखना और टेबल्स रखना, और एक्सपीरियंस जब आएगा उसी हिसाब से प्राइसिंग का असेसमेंट करना। तो जितने ज़्यादा लोग हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस खरीदेंगे उतना रिस्क कम होगा, इंसिडेंट्स कम होगा, एंड वी वांट टू गिव द बेनिफिट बैक टू द कंज्यूमर्स, टू द सिटीजंस ऑफ इंडिया, बिकॉज अफोर्डेबिलिटी बढ़ेगी, पेनिट्रेशन बढ़ेगा। हम जो मेजर करते हैं, हम दोनों पैरामीटर्स में इंडस्ट्री मेजर करती है, नंबर ऑफ लाइव्स एज वेल एज द टोटल ग्रॉस डायरेक्ट प्रीमियम। तो दोनों एंगल्स हम मेजर करते हैं और दोनों को ट्रैक करते हैं, और हमारा लक्ष्य जो है कि हर लाइफ को इंश्योरेंस, हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस की बहुत जरूरत है। इट इज अ लिविंग बेनिफिट, इट्स नॉट अ डेथ बेनिफिट। जब आदमी जिंदा है उसको हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस की जरूरत पड़ेगी, ना कि ओनली हॉस्पिटल में जाने के लिए, बाकी सारे खर्चों के लिए। एंड देन फिनेंशियल सिक्योरिटी ऑफ द पर्सन, द अर्निंग मेंबर एंड द फैमिली इज अश्योर्ड।
लेकिन लोग नहीं खरीद रहे ना उस रफ्तार से जिस रफ्तार से खरीदना चाहिए।
देखिए, इंश्योरेंस तो पेनिट्रेशन बढ़ा है, 2%, 2.2% से 4.1% हुआ है। हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस का सबसे ज्यादा ग्रोथ है। ऑफ कोर्स लाइफ का अब मैच्योरिटी आ गया है। सो एज अवेयरनेस इज growing in, and my fellow panelists mentioned lot of pro consumer measures from IRDA and real development activity. So I am very very hopeful that we'll see great speed and momentum as we come forward.
ठीक है, अब वेंकटेश आपसे मैं शॉर्ट में चाहूंगी कि हमें इस सेशन को क्लोज करना है। आप क्या एक वन बिग चेंज जो आप सोचते हैं कि कंपनी के एंड पर होना चाहिए टू 2047 के गोल तक पहुंचने के लिए?
So a bright business idea is what you're seeking.
Yes.
Okay, a bright business idea is, if you look at it, something like a data coin. I think the biggest problem that the insurance industry is facing, availability of the right data. With the UID invention and the UPI penetration, with Aadhaar integration, if the entire insurance industry, and I'm speaking for both my colleagues here from the health insurance and life insurance, okay, if there is a single data source in terms of saying actual health of people, I think the way we can rethink insurance is going to change in a very, very big way. Imagine, the industry had a full view of what tablet the person is taking for what disease and what kind of lifestyle he's doing, integrated data. Our entire insurance aspect can change, penetration can change, reach can change. I think
data
that's one
is money, yeah? Data is the new
Data
money.
is money,
And I
yeah.
think Money9's data coin will be quite a helpful tool for you people.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, Shubhajit, last word from you. What do you think that one thing that you want to do and you think you should do, the industry should do to reach the target of insurance for all?
Okay, before that I'd like to say last 5 years, actually the industry, as every panel is saying, has done a lot in terms of customer proposition, whether it is a product, pricing the cost, claim settlement ratio. Life insurance company, the claim settlement ratio is on average 98% plus. We are aiming to have a 99% plus claim settlement ratio this year. Persistency, the renewal of the book has going up, so on and so forth. But is it good enough for the 2047? No, it requires more. I think one of the big way that we have a great products. We require a distribution to go to the last mile. For example, if I have to offer to the last mile, suppose someone cannot afford 25,000 for a 1 crore, the person can afford 5,000, can I get a 20 lakhs insurance would be good enough for the person. I need to reach out to the person. I think the digital would help a lot in terms of piggy-riding the digital ecosystem currently with all the payments and all the ecosystem will be significantly game changer. Data, I think, is a part of the digital ecosystem. And whether, so 3-4 things. We have a product, we have a customer onboarding and the process, the risk management, because the asymmetry of the payoff, there is a lot of fraudsters and we need to, and finally, the reach. Digital ecosystem, and that's how we are very bullish about, will help to override, come up with all these four systems to have a much greater reach. But having said that, the way we need to all involved in terms of awareness, because awareness only these without a large scale awareness will not serve. So you ask for a one, I will give two. One is the digital ecosystem and the awareness at the ground level.
Thank you so much for this discussion. Let's hope that we achieve the target which is being set, 2047 insurance for all, and the company, the regulator, all of them are tirelessly working towards that goal. वक्त बताएगा हम उस टारगेट तक पहुंचेंगे या नहीं. गौरव, back to you.
थैंक यू प्रियंका, थैंक यू आप सभी मेहमानों का बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया हमें ज्वाइन करने के लिए. और अब मैं मंच पर बुलाना चाहूंगा TV9 कन्नड़ा के एडिटर आर श्रीधरन को. प्लीज वो मंच पर आए और हमारे जो मेहमान हैं इनको सम्मानित करें मेमेंटो देके, प्लीज. May I have the mementos, please? थैंक यू ऑल. प्लीज अब अपना अपना स्थान ग्रहण करें. आप एक जोरदार तालियों के साथ इस पैनल का एक बार फिर से स्वागत हो जाए. शुक्रिया आप सभी को. थैंक यू श्रीधरन. तो चलिए अब हम अपने अगले सत्र की तरफ बढ़ेंगे और उससे पहले हम आगे बढ़े आपको बता दें कि ये जो आप फाइनेंशियल फ्रीडम समिट देख रहे हैं Money9 का, ये Money9 के मोबाइल ऐप पर तो लाइव है ही, साथ ही Money9 और TV9 नेटवर्क के YouTube, फेसबुक चैनल्स के जरिए पूरे देश में पहुंच रहा है. और जैसा कि अभी हम आपको बता रहे थे 7 लैंग्वेजेस में इसको आप देख सकते हैं. अलग अलग भाषाओं में अलग अलग दर्शकों की जरूरतों के हिसाब से हमने उसे डिजाइन किया हुआ है. अब अगला सत्र, और प्रियंका में यहाँ ज्वाइन कर चुकी हैं. प्रियंका, इस बार के बजट में सरकार की तरफ से नए टैक्स स्लैब को लेकर जोर शोर से घोषणा की गई. 7 लाख तक की सालाना कमाई टैक्स फ्री रहेगी ये कहा गया, और कमाई 7 लाख रुपए से 1 रुपए भी ऊपर हुई तो कोई टैक्स छूट नहीं मिलेगी. और पुराना टैक्स है जो ओल्ड टैक्स रिजीम है उसमें कोई बदलाव नहीं किया गया. सवाल यह है कि क्या प्रोत्साहन के बिना बचत रह सकेगी?
बिल्कुल गौरव, मुझे लगता है हम सभी जब अपनी टैक्स प्लानिंग करते हैं ना तो हम बहुत सारे इन्वेस्टमेंट इसलिए करते हैं क्योंकि हमें ETC की छूट मिलती है. आप भी वो करते होंगे कि ETC की छूट मिलती है. पर अब सरकार ने इस बजट में कह दिया वो ETC की छूट पाने वाली इस कैटेगरी में जिसमें मैं और गौरव और आप लोग के कई लोग आते होंगे, उसको हम थोड़ा सा वो जो है इग्नोर करती हुई नजर आ रही है और नई टैक्स रिजीम को जो है ज्यादा पसंद करवाने की कोशिश में जुटी हुई है. लेकिन चुनौतियां भी बहुत है. क्या लोग इन हालात में आर्थिक तौर पर खुद को और परिवार को कैसे सुरक्षित रखेंगे, क्योंकि अभी तक तो एक टैक्स का लॉलीपॉप रहता था जिसके लिए वो करते थे. तो Money9 फाइनेंशियल फ्रीडम समिट का अब आ रहा है बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण पैनल. हमारा इस सेशन को मॉडरेट कर रहे हैं TV9 कन्नड़ के संपादक आर श्रीधरन जी, और उनके साथ मंच पर जुड़ने वाले खास मेहमान गौरव आपको इंट्रोड्यूस करवाएंगे.
बिल्कुल, मैं चाहूंगा कि आपको हमारा जो अगला पैनल है उससे इंट्रोड्यूस करवाऊं. श्रीधरन, आप प्लीज उनको लेकर आइए. बंधन बैंक के चीफ इकोनॉमिस्ट तथा वाइस प्रेसिडेंट सिद्धार्थ सान्याल हमारे बीच आ चुके हैं. उनका जोरदार तालियों के साथ स्वागत करते हैं. एक्सिस बैंक के चीफ इकोनॉमिस्ट और एग्जीक्यूटिव वाइस प्रेसिडेंट स्वागत भट्टाचार्य इस वक्त हमारे साथ हैं. बहुत स्वागत है आपका. और रेटिंग एजेंसी केयर रेटिंग्स के चीफ इकोनॉमिस्ट रजनी सिन्हा इस वक्त हमारे साथ हैं. मैम, आपका बहुत स्वागत है. और अतुल जोशी जो कि एक फेमस इकोनॉमिस्ट हैं और इंडिया रेटिंग्स और फिच के साथ जुड़े हुए हैं. सर, आप भी प्लीज आइए और मंच पर अपना आसन ग्रहण करिए. बहुत स्वागत है. श्रीधरन, इट्स ऑल योर्स नाउ. थैंक यू.
Thank you, Priyanka and Gaurav. I think the panel that we have chosen for the topic that we've chosen for this afternoon is really at the heart of what Money9 is about as a product, which is to ensure that we are able to empower every Indian with financial freedom. But that is easier said than done. If we take even the richest country in the world, which is the US, the situation isn't very good. In fact, some of the data that comes out of US might quite shock you. For example, 2/3 of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So if they didn't get their next month's salary, 2/3 of Americans won't be able to meet any of their EMIs or even run their households. Similarly, a similar number of Americans wouldn't be able to raise $500 or $1,000 in unanticipated expenses without borrowing from, let's say, friends, family, or on credit card. So if that is the situation in a country like the US, in India where 46% of our households make less than 15,000 rupees a month, how feasible is this goal or this dream of making every Indian financially independent? So for today's panel, I'm going to break up my discussion into 3 large buckets. One, we're going to look at what can we do in terms of changing the habits of our investors, and how do we raise the awareness. Second, I'll want the expert panelists also to talk about, now that we are living in a high inflation, high risk, and a very uncertain environment, what kind of a saving strategy or investment strategy are you going to need? Finally, I'm going to look at, is there room for policymakers to step in more aggressively perhaps and make investment more attractive for retail investors? So let me start with the first, get the discussion rolling. Rajni, let me start with you. Why is it that after so many years, most Indians still prefer to park their money in savings account, post office account, savings account there? And why is there so much of a caution when it comes to money?
So let me begin by throwing some statistics to set the perspective. So if we look at the overall savings of households, more than 50% goes into physical assets, which would be real estate and gold, and less than 50% goes into financial assets, which has just about changed for last year, with financial assets becoming more than 50%, but broadly that's the trend. Now, even in financial assets, like you said, around 50% goes into bank deposits and currency, cash. So it's only the remaining 50% which goes into other assets, and into something like stock market and mutual funds, only around 4% goes into that segment. So definitely there's a lot of caution which is being exercised here. And I would say the main reason for that is still lack of awareness. A lack of awareness about financial products, lack of access to do that kind of investment. So now the banking sector's penetration has improved. So most of the people, even in smaller cities and towns, have bank deposits. But in smaller cities and towns, they still do not have good awareness of other financial products. So in insurance, we still have around 15 to 17% of financial savings going into insurance products. Even into PPF, we have around 15-16%. But what is really required is to increase awareness about investment in stock market and in mutual funds, which has improved in the last few years, but a lot more needs to be done.
Right. I think that really is the key to my mind. And, before I go to Atul, let me ask Shogata this. In my own family circle, I have a lot of friends, even some of my siblings, who really don't want to educate themselves about investment options. I mean, that's the honest thing, I guess. Is it because they're scared of numbers? Or do they find understanding financial instruments so complex that they take the safety of, let's say, a bank deposit or a real estate or gold or something like a post office savings? Shogata, to your mind, what is really going on here?
So first, thank you TV9 for this opportunity of being here. Wonderful opportunity. So it's a complex environment. Look at it, I mean, take slices of the age groups. So people in my age groups who are not very financially savvy, and potentially that's the way it should be. So relatively midlife people should be investing in more secure products. Stock market, say for instance, is the game of the young. And that's the rule of thumb, that your age minus, the 100 minus your age should be your allocation to the equity markets. And equity markets, again, is, you park your money in equities and forget about it for 10 years. So that's a young man's game. Now the young man's game, young men's, women's game is also now the cryptocurrencies. Yeah, I mean, now it's coming down a little bit. So that's one. The biggest thing, so I mean, that partially explains. The second part is income distribution. Incomes in India and disposable incomes, that is after the basic, the expenditures, etc. So disposable incomes is concentrated in the top 3 or 4 10% deciles, as they are called. So so they have the maximum amount of savings, disposable incomes. In that, I think there is a fair bit of, and particularly amongst the younger groups in that bucket, I think there's a fair bit of understanding of, and particularly when in the last 2 or 3 years when equity markets go up like a rocket, so then there's a huge shift, and which is understandable. I mean, for many people, I mean, in the big cities, even in tier 2 cities, that people see that when bank rates of interest, even in fixed deposits, is much less than the current inflation, whereas your equity markets are giving you 10% return. So there is a huge shift, which you saw in the SIPs, investments in mutual funds, investment in direct equities, and cryptocurrencies, of course. I mean, so all of that. So that shot up. And now that the equity markets are down, so is the investment in mutual. So that implies a certain amount of, and in mutual funds, remember that they had penetrated down into the tier 2 and even in some cases in tier 3 cities. So that a fair bit of money was coming in from that. So I think basically amongst the target segment where a lot of savings, financial savings, as Rajni said, I mean, still there's a huge amount, and particularly I'm sure from the semi-urban and the rural areas, investment in fixed, in physical assets. So I think there is a fair bit of literacy, not generally, I completely agree. So that needs to be done. But I think people are savvy enough to realize where the returns of their financial savings are going to come from, adjusted for some bit of risk. And now, given the carnage that we are seeing, I mean, a lot of the young people who are coming in from the tech sector, the global capability centers, so those people have now realized that they actually need to save more. So, I mean, the good times are gone. Yeah? So I think it's a complex melange of things, but the basic thing, if you want to increase financial savings, the one thing that explains financial savings increase is high growth. So whatever else needs to be done, and hundreds of things need to be done, the basic thing that needs to be done is get your growth rate up.
Right. So that is something which is not in the hands of an ordinary Joe like me, for example. But I still need to secure my family. I need to educate my children. I need to get my son, daughter married, buy a house, buy a car, everything. So, Siddharth and Atul, the other point which Shogata made is that it is not so much a lack of awareness, while that is definitely there, but what he's hinting at is basically that there's a relatively low risk appetite among us Indian savers and investors. So, let me start with Atul, then we'll go to Siddharth. Is it a function of risk, or is it still a disposable issue?
I think it's function of both. If you look at the disposable income, consistently it's been coming off. And the way to look at it is to look at how the Indians have been borrowing. If I look at 2010 data, the personal loans outstanding from banking system to individuals was about 6 lakh crores, thereabouts. 2020 it became 25 lakh crores. And from 2020 March to December 23, that 25 lakh crores has become 40 lakh crores. Now add to this the amount that the banking system disbursed to NBFCs, which moved from 1 lakh crores in 2010 March to 16 lakh crores by December 22. Add to this the loans given by microfinance institutions, the lending platforms, the gold loan companies, etc., etc. My sense is about 35 crore people on an average should be the borrowers, the number. in terms of numbers. Now, this is exactly opposite of our ancient wisdom. You know, in Hindi we say that ki Deva Daitya hai. Deva is borrowing. Deva Daitya hai Kalyug ka. It takes life away. So, you know, we have lost that wisdom. We are borrowing for living in the present. And, you know, the Bappi Lahiri song, Kal kya hoga kisko pata, abhi zindagi ka le lo maja. So everybody is taking maja, which is consumption, which is reflected in housing, etc., etc. But it is something which is doing away with the savings. So one is the attitude. The second is the risk. As Saugata very rightly said, it's a factor of age and also the understanding that one has to develop. There is not enough dissemination. The entire information is, let's say, centered around either mutual funds or insurance companies. You know, they have the money, they have the power, they have the ears of the regulators. But there are so many other things which, you know, are good products, but there is no dissemination of information. The third thing I would say is the regulators need to play their part. You know, one of the RBI governors simply shifted the whole interest rate risk from banks to the individuals. It was Urjit Patel, I think, who said that housing loans will now be linked to repo. Now, I don't know, it just beats my logic as to who is more capable of managing the interest rate risk. You're going to see, you know, the repo rate increases and you're going to see the kind of stress on housing loans, personal loans, vehicle loans. This takes away your savings potential. Regulators need to intervene and think about what they've done. So there are so many things about savings which one needs to really look at. It's a complex picture, but the more, let's say, attitude we develop, the more information we give, little bit of regulatory intervention and product innovation, we are there.
Right. So Siddharth, Atul's thrown an interesting point into the mix, which is that increasingly Indians are spenders and not savers. Atul, correct me if I'm wrong, that's essentially one of the threads that's emerging from what you just said.
Yes.
So do numbers bear out? And obviously he's talked about the NBFC borrowing numbers. But according to you, what's really going on? Are we like, the economic growth obviously has to come at the back of consumption. And Bappi Lahiri's song, your take?
I'd put it this way. Over the longer term, if I take a 10-year horizon, I'm pretty positive, quite bullish on overall overall savings rate, households I'm talking about, as well as financial savings rate in particular. I'll try to explain why I think that way. Think about yourself, think about any other individual. Savings rate is a function of what? Savings rate is a function of, all the speakers have also indicated about that in some way or other. Broadly, we can think about, unless there is very significant change in risk assessment or stuff like that, it's broadly a function of your disposable income and the return you get out of that. If you want to make it slightly more spicy, you can call it risk-adjusted return. Let us not get there. So basically, disposable income and return. Now, at this moment, last few years, we have seen a situation where there has been a very significant headwind for disposable income in general, from both sides. In terms of overall income growth, there has been a bit of a dent in that, as well as because overall inflation, etc., basic inflation level had been very significantly high, your disposable income has been coming down even more. And also, to some extent, here the return factor didn't really play too much of a role. In fact, in some of the segments, we have seen returns or the rate of interest or the stock market, yield, whatever you call it, have actually gone higher. But here there is a classic case of what in terms of economics we call the income effect versus the substitution effect. It's not a substitution between both these things have actually come into play. The income effect didn't really allow the overall pull for savings to go up. And also, in terms of, didn't really, was not helped by the substitution effect either. So in the near term, we got one particular phenomena which you don't really expect to persist for a very, very long period of time. Over the longer period of time, you are actually seeing overall income level going higher, awareness going higher. People are inclined to hold less money for their cash transaction. There is a possibility 10 years down the line, people might be willing to go with thinner amount of cash in their wallet and pocket. So all these things structurally are good factors for boosting savings and financial savings in general. Add to this particular factor one particular phenomena that when we are talking about say 10 years down the line, we are talking about the per capita income or overall income for an average individual moving to a zone where he or she can think a little more proactively about saving, meeting all the consumption and essential needs, right? So we'll be, as a nation, we'll be moving in that direction. Awareness level will be slightly more. So overall, I see reasons to be more hopeful about savings and financial savings in particular over a 10-year horizon. While I completely agree that the phenomena didn't really hold too well over the last, say, 3 years,
Right.
or you cannot be that sure about the next 2 years.
All right. So, Rajni, let me ask you one question on this topic before we move to the next two other sub-themes. Do you think the increasing digitization and digital banking and the ease with which people are now able to send and receive, money on their smartphones, is that going to spur a change in investment habits, and therefore we will see a greater sophistication among investors in terms of their own financial security?
Definitely, this is going to pan out over the next few years. In terms of digitization, we have seen a very big boom, and especially during the pandemic. And we are seeing it in all spheres of life. And definitely, even in investment, we saw it growing by leaps and bounds during pandemic. So that's definitely going to help. But what is also important, which I also raised last time, when we are talking about awareness, we are not talking about awareness amongst people like us, people we see around us. We are talking about awareness in other age groups, in other income categories, in other societies, in other cities, in smaller towns. So yes, investment in mutual funds and SIPs have started happening, but we are talking about a much, much bigger pace which we want. So that is something which is going to take time. So even this, talking about digitization and adoption of that in the investment and how we invest, all that is happening. Right now, it's kind of, I would say limited to a set of people, but the whole digitization process, the way even the uneducated people and the working class is adopting to digitization, it's phenomenal. So it will take some time before it moves to that segment, but I think what is more important is to overall increase more awareness about other financial products, apart from the saving schemes and bank deposits, which everyone is aware of.
Right, okay. So now let me come to the next bit that I wanted all the panelists to talk about is the uncertain and the high interest rate environment in which all of us are living currently. I hope it doesn't last for too long, but no one can really predict how long this is going to last or not last. So Atul, let me start with you. Given that interest rates are probably going to keep going up, at least in the US and other developed countries, and as a result, India may also need to, although today we saw that industry and other economists are urging RBI not to increase interest rates, put a pause on interest rate hikes. What kind of an approach would you advise investors or savers to adopt at this time?
Two things. One is that we are almost near the peak, to my mind. I think by October we should start seeing RBI at least reducing rates. And I'm not saying that RBI is going to do it voluntarily. RBI will be forced because of external events if they don't kind of pause now. So give or take, October is where the peak is. So start locking into longer term, high interest rate instruments right away. So one is that whatever instruments you are purchasing or investing in, this is a time to lock into the long term. That's one. The second thing is that you continuously have excess money which you want to reinvest. Look at some of the alternates other than the mutual funds and the insurance companies. For example, RBI has actually floated a retail GSEC platform I'm not sure how many of you actually look at it, but historically, let me tell you that bank FD rates are about 100 to 250 basis points. 1 से 1.5% कम होता है comparative maturity of GSEC historically, last 20 years. So why invest in a bank FD when RBI gives you the facility to invest in GSEC, and you can invest as low as 5,000 rupees. Just go to RBI website, look at retail investments. You can straightway take exposure and earn 100 to 250 basis points of higher interest rate for the same maturity. The third thing would be to look at, alternate investment instruments. For example, today a lot of tech platforms give you ability to invest in invoice discounting, 10,000 rupees to whatever amounts you want to invest up to 1 crore. You can take the risk if you want. I mean, analyze the risk, invest it, but it gives you anything between 10% to 13%. Maturity 30 days to 90 days. So that's another option which you have. You have the bond platforms. You can invest in bonds. So these are the things which I think digitally the savings are getting disrupted away from the traditional mutual funds and the insurance companies. So keep your eyes and ears open, and if you look around, there are enough and more options for you to look at and invest and increase your yield on your idle funds, short-term, long-term, and even in the high interest rates.
Right. So, Shogata, once again, it does appear there are enough instruments and enough options available. It boils down again to lack of awareness and people acting on those, options. So whose job is it to really create this awareness? Obviously, Money9 takes this job very seriously, but I guess there has to be some sort of a push which comes from industry as well as at the government as well. So how would you address this?
So again, whose job is it to increase savings? Take the example of China. China's savings rate at its peak, now it's come down a little bit, was 50% of GDP. Ours was about at the peak, at the best days was 36 odd percent. Yeah? So China's thing is a government thing. So China's savings to fund China's growth and investment, because their growth was investment led. Yeah? So banks used to offer 0.5% or 1%. So and there were no social safety nets, etc., just like in India. So the point was to sustain China's growth, you had domestic funds, but you didn't have domestic consumption. So China's consumption had to come from abroad. So its exports was the engine of growth using domestic savings. That was a government-led. So the government actually repressed interest rates and extracted savings from households. Yeah. Should India do the same? Probably not. And we are increasing our exports, but it will take some time to hit anywhere close to what China's export levels were and how China's exports helped its domestic growth. So in India's case, again, just like in the last budget that you saw, people have been criticizing the budget that not enough incentives have been given for increasing disposable incomes, taxes have not been cut. I think one of the best ways to do this is to get the overall levels of interest rates down. It has to be balanced because, from a borrower's perspective, the guys who invest, so lower interest rates is good, but from a depositor's point of view, you need a certain amount of, so that balance is very difficult. So again, when you are borrowing, you actually are investing that you are earning some income. So that level is good. The point that the fiscal deficit did not do enough to get this done, I think the good point is that narrowed the borrowing. So if the government's borrowing does not explode, then your overall levels of interest rates begins to come down, and more importantly, so does inflation. Because inflation is the biggest killer of savings, of consumption, etc. So that needs to come down. That is slowly coming down. So from the push and pull factors, from the government's push factors, I think the government is doing more or less close to what it ideally should be doing. From the pull factors, from our industry, insurance industry, you just saw the industry, heard the industry panel, industry, provident funds, etc., and mutual funds. And so from the pull factors, I think probably something else needs to be done. But again, I mean, a lot of these are dependent on markets. Only very sophisticated investors, the people in this room, many of your listening audience, will be able to time the changes in interest rates, etc. Because remember, the returns, which is, as Siddharth also mentioned, that returns are a big factor in determining savings behavior. So returns are very economic cycle dependent. How you change your your allocation asset is what determines your return, not so much the individual bonds or stocks or whatever. So that's something that the mutual fund, say, industry, for instance. People during the pandemic became very conscious of the need for insurance, because mortality rates increased, etc. That is again coming down. So, I mean, if you talk to insurance, you will hear that in tier 2, tier 3 cities, the demand for insurance, premier products are beginning to come off. So this is a complex environment. I mean, what's the role of the government? What's the role of the individual? But the government's role and the regulator's role is definitely increasing financial literacy, safety, risks, etc.
Right. So, Siddharth, since we have a lot of people watching us online on Money9 Hindi and Bharatvarsh also, मैं आपसे ये हिंदी में पूछूंगा ये वाला सवाल कि अभी जो सौगता जी ने कहा था कि there are a lot of options available, but इसको manage करना आना चाहिए. तो ये जो है, जो एक आदमी, आम आदमी है, वो दिन भर अपने काम में बिजी रहता है, उसके बस का तो है नहीं. तो इसका मतलब है कि सबसे अच्छा जो उपाय है कि आप किसी फंड मैनेजर, रिलायबल फंड मैनेजर के साथ आप अपना इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और fill it, shut it, forget वाला जैसा बात. तो इस पे आप क्या कहना चाहेंगे हिंदी में?
Okay, so I'll put it this way. I'll take a step back. हम जब बैंकिंग का बात करते हैं तो बैंकिंग में एक बहुत कॉमन टर्मिनोलॉजी हम सब लोग इन दिस रूम एवरीवन वुड नो, देयर इज अ टर्मिनोलॉजी कॉल्ड एसएलआर, स्टैट्यूटरी लिक्विडिटी रेशियो. इन पर्सनल फाइनेंस आल्सो आई थिंक देयर इज वन एसएलआर कॉन्सेप्ट knowingly or unknowingly in a saver's mind. That SLR stands for something else. That SLR is safety, liquidity and return, and possibly in that order, right? And you cannot deny the merit of that particular factor. You have to ensure that. My sense is that over a period of time, a very significant improvement that needs to come is थोड़ा asset allocation और थोड़ा actively होने की जरूरत है, क्योंकि आप खाली safety factor में dominated रहेंगे और पूरा के पूरा पैसा आपका banks का savings deposit में डालेंगे, because that is the most safe and most liquid, then you will not get return. So somewhere over the long term, people will try to strike that balance. Here, the role of the government is in terms of generating awareness so that people also know that safety factor किसमें कितना है, कहाँ आप कितना risk ले रहे हो. I think we are moving well in that particular direction. Over a period of time, I think people have started doing that allocation mental maths in the back of their mind that, okay, I need this much money at short notice, so I'll be keeping it here. Gradually, we have started talking a little more about insurance, still very less penetrated compared to the optimal level, but at least kuch to money ja raha hai udhar, and obviously the return factor is kind of pulling people towards more towards equity market and some of the more risky avenues where you can take the risk. I think iska saath financial entities ka, for example banks, for example a bank like mine, where there is a lot of network in some of the even rural and relatively less penetrated areas, we are trying to have one particular approach which is also yielding fantastic result. We have realized that even at the bottom of the pyramid also there are pockets where there is very considerable level of saving potential, but that money is actually not coming in the mainstream. But for a bank, it's very costly if you actually try to ambush that particular market. You cannot do that. There comes a role, people talk about digital. I think there is a very significant role about data and analytics that we try to introduce in a very significant way, where there is scale, where your efforts can be a lot more targeted, and actually you manage to educate people to go for this kind of financial savings products. So all these factors put together, I think, I go back to my previous comment, that this is what gives me a lot of optimism about overall financial space and financial savings in general.
Right. तो रजनी और अतुल जी, दो बातें जो निकली हैं इनके कहने से ये है कि एक मैंने सुना पोर्टफोलियो एलोकेशन और दूसरा रिटर्न मैनेजमेंट। ये जो आम आदमी जब सुनता है वो तो हाथ खड़े कर देता है, वो तो बोला यार ये तो मुझे नहीं समझ आता ये क्या है। तो आप क्या कहेंगे, कैसे उनको क्या कहेंगे कि कैसे अपना पैसा मैनेज करना चाहिए, सबसे उचित उपाय क्या है?
मैं कहूँगी कि जैसा कि आपने कहा आम आदमी के लिए टाइम करना कि इक्विटी मार्केट कब टॉप में है या इंटरेस्ट रेट अब इससे बढ़ेगा घटेगा, ये बहुत मुश्किल है। सो आम आदमी को जो अपना एलोकेशन है वो अपने एज के हिसाब से करना चाहिए। जब वो यंगर हैं उन्हें थोड़ा रिस्क लेना चाहिए, उनको अपना ज़्यादा पोर्टफोलियो इक्विटी में रखना चाहिए और रिलेटिवली कम डेट में रखना चाहिए। और जैसे जैसे कि उनका एज बढ़ता है उनका डेट का प्रपोर्शन बढ़ा देना चाहिए। आई थिंक ये सिंपल कॉन्सेप्ट बेटर रहेगा। अगर उन्हें और कुछ नहीं समझ में आता है तो एटलीस्ट इतना वो करें। और अगर स्टॉक मार्केट में कर रहे हैं तो वो डायरेक्टली अगर वो नहीं समझ में आता है उन्हें किस स्टॉक में डालें क्या, तो वो म्यूचुअल फंड में एसआईपी करें और वो एसआईपी करके एक जो भी अमाउंट वो कर सकते हैं मंथली बेसिस में वो करके और वो भूल जाएं। क्योंकि अगर वो मार्केट का वो ऊपर चढ़ना गिरना वो देखेंगे और ट्रैक करेंगे तो वो घबरा जाएंगे, उनको लगेगा वो म्यूचुअल फंड से बाहर निकल जाएं। तो जैसा कि मेरे पैनलिस्ट ने पहले भी कहा कि इक्विटी मार्केट में आप डाल रहे हो तो 5 साल 10 साल के लिए आप पैसा डाल के भूल जाओ और एसआईपी बेस्ट है उसमें, क्योंकि उसमें फिर आपको टाइम नहीं करना पड़ेगा।
अतुल जी आपका सुझाव?
दो चीज़ें मैं कहूँगा। एक तो रजनी जी की बात बिल्कुल सही है कि उम्र के हिसाब से इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए। दूसरा मैं कहूँगा कि हमारी संस्कृति को देख के इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए। हम देखते हैं कि हमारी फैमिलीज़ में क्या होता है, हमारी फैमिलीज़ में ये होता है कि लड़का हो या लड़की हो शादी में उसको सोना देना ही है। तो एक ये है कि अभी से ही उसका प्रोविज़न करते चले। लोग ये कहेंगे कि भैया ये बिल्कुल वेस्टफुल इन्वेस्टमेंट है, इससे कोई नौकरियां नहीं बनती। मैं कम्प्लीटली डिसएग्री हूँ। एक बार किसी ज्वेलर की दुकान पे बैठिए और ये देखिए कि वो कितना एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेट करता है। वन ऑफ द बिगेस्ट एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेशन इज़ थ्रू गोल्ड एंड गोल्ड ज्वेलरी। तो मैं ये कहूँगा कि अगर आपके कुटुंब में शादी का जो चलता है वो व्यवहार चलता होगा तो धीरे धीरे 1 गिनी 2 गिनी 3 गिनी लेते रहिए। हम अगर हमारे पुरखों को देखें तो उनके पास ये ट्रेडिशन थी और आज भी कई सारी फैमिलीज इसको आगे बढ़ाती रही है। आज की तारीख में इसकी मैं एक ये दूंगा, साबिती ऐसे दूंगा कि गोल्ड लोन कंपनीज इतनी सक्सेसफुल क्यों हैं। गरीब के पास सोना था तो गोल्ड लोन कंपनीज में गोल्ड दे चुके, अगर नहीं होता तो क्या करते। तो ये बिल्कुल मेरे ख्याल से अनप्रोडक्टिव क्लास जिस तरह से बताया जाता है गोल्ड को, आई कंप्लीटली डिसएग्री। आपकी ट्रेडिशन के हिसाब से आप इन्वेस्टमेंट करना चालू करिए। दूसरा आपका एजुकेशन। आज की तारीख में चाहे कितना भी आदमी गरीब हो वो चाहेगा कि मेरा बच्चा पढ़े, तो आपको लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टमेंट चाहिए कि जब वो बच्चा ग्रेजुएट होगा तो उसको MBA में जाना है तो 5 लाख 50 लाख 60 लाख कुछ भी एडमिशन फ़ी हो सकती है, तो उसको मद्देनज़र रख के अभी से कैसे सेविंग करें। तो यह है कि एक तो आप रिस्क लीजिए, इक्विटी में देखिए, लेकिन ये भी होता है कि आपको इक्विटी में अगर इन्वेस्ट करना है तो आपको चौकन्ना रहना पड़ता है। ये भी हकीकत है कि अगर जिस वक्त आपको डिसइन्वेस्ट करना हो तभी कोई ग्लोबल इवेंट हो गया तो आपकी प्राइस 30, 40, 50% वैसे ही निकल जाती है। तो ऐसा नहीं है कि आपने इक्विटी में इन्वेस्ट किया तो आपको प्रॉफिट होना ही होना है, या आपने इन्वेस्टमेंट SIP में किया या म्यूचुअल फंड में किया तो आपको प्रॉफिट होना ही होना है। इक्विटी मीन्स रिस्क। चौकन्ना रहिए 24/7, वो एबिलिटी है तो आप बिल्कुल इन्वेस्ट करिए, खूब पैसा बनेगा। 1 लाख से आप 50 लाख आराम से बना सकते हैं, चौकन्ना रहिए। या फिर आप जाइए लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टमेंट्स। लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टमेंट्स में आपको मैं कहूँगा सबसे सेफ तो GSEC है ही है, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया सिक्योरिटीज़ है। और आज की तारीख में आप 5,000 रुपये से लेके 5 करोड़ रुपया एज एन इंडिविजुअल आप सेव कर सकते हैं, तो वो भी एक ऑप्शन आपके पास है। लॉन्ग टर्म बॉन्ड्स होते हैं, जैसे कि SBI के बॉन्ड्स है, 81 बॉन्ड्स है, आपको आज 8.25, 8.5, 8.9% मिल रहा है। तो आप अगर देखेंगे तो काफ़ी सारे इन्वेस्टमेंट एवेन्यूज़ तो है, लेकिन हमारी जो ज़रूरियात है उसके हिसाब से भी हमको इन्वेस्टमेंट करना चाहिए, उम्र का तकाजा लेते हुए, लेकिन साथ ही साथ हमारी जो फैमिली ट्रेडिशंस है और हमको जो लगता है कि कहाँ कहाँ पर हमको कब कब तकलीफ आएगी, उसके लिए प्रोविजन करके अगर इन्वेस्टमेंट करते चलेंगे तो बोरोइंग का समय नहीं आएगा.
So now we down to the last 3 minutes of this panel. One thing which I want to wrap up this panel on is the fact that a lot of people, the average Indian has an expectation from the government that the government will do something to incentivize me to save. But like Kennedy very famously said, don't ask what the government can do for you, what you can do for the government. Here we are asking people only to do it for themselves. Like how can you become financially more secure? So that's the question they have to ask themselves. Shogata, let me start with you and we'll try to wrap this up in 3 minutes with all 4 of you. Are we now in an era where the investor should expect that the SOPs and incentives that were given before to encourage, say, savings and other investments, although in this budget also we had the Mahila, Samman saving scheme which was launched. Is that like gone now? Are we in a different era now as investors?
So to a certain extent that's over and done because एक तो है जो ELSS investments थे उतना पैसा उतना successful नहीं हुआ. बाकी interest rates, महिला सम्मान, सुकन्या समृद्धि, ये सब के लिए specific schemes के लिए targeting specific groups, उनके लिए वो target करके उनको higher interest rates दे रहे हैं government. Third है EPF, PF मैंने जो हमारे जो provident fund और small savings के instruments हैं वहाँ पे high rates बढ़ा के रखे हैं, वहाँ पे वो खींचने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. बट वही चीज़ है बार बार वही कह रहा हूँ यहाँ पे कि rather than these specific incentives को इसको tweak करे उसको tweak करे वो नहीं एक consistent program रखे कि अगले 7 साल में 10 साल में 6.5% हमारा growth होगा. Last time remember ये 2003 से लेके 2008 तक के before the global financial crisis spoiled that party, वो that was the golden years of growth and the golden years of savings. वो मैंने गवर्नमेंट का ये सब छोटे मोटे ट्वीक करके थोड़ा बहुत तो जाएगा ये पैसा, मैंने 10,000 करोड़ आएगा, लेकिन पूरे स्कीम में जहाँ 40 लाख 50 लाख करोड़ की बात कर रहे हैं हम लोग, क्या फर्क पड़ता है यहाँ पे? वो सब नहीं. तो एक गवर्नमेंट को करना है ग्रोथ पे नजर रखे, बिल्कुल फोकस वहाँ पे रखे.
सिद्धार्थ,
आई थिंक लॉन्ग टर्म में 2-3 चीजें इंपॉर्टेंट है इसमें. वन फैक्टर इज कंसिस्टेंट पॉलिसी. सो यू कैनॉट go one step forward, one step backward. I think that's very important. In that context, given that we are moving towards a slightly more cleaner regime, is not a bad thing to have. And people, I mean, the target group of savers, they are also maturing over time. So it's not a bad thing. So consistency is possibly the key. Ensuring safety of the various instruments or making people aware of the various risks that they are taking is possibly the other most important thing. And there, it's not only the responsibility of the regulator and policymakers. I think every stakeholder associated with the financial ecosystem, regulators, policymakers, banks, NBFCs, media, analysts, everyone would have to play a role apart from that. I think these two are the long-term key to me.
Great. Rajni?
So I'll simply put it that research shows that not just in India but globally also, tax incentives do not necessarily lead to increased household savings. So I think like what my other panelists have been saying, the government focus should be on growth. High per capita income will ensure higher savings. So that's what the focus should be on. In fact, removing with the new tax regime, with all these tax incentives going, in fact, there'll be flexibility to the households to invest in whichever they find apt, whichever asset.
Atul?
मेरे हिसाब से फाइनेंशियल लिटरेसी सबसे ज़्यादा इम्पॉर्टेंट है. आज की तारीख में गांव-गांव में लोगों को पता है कि पीएम आवास योजना है, लेकिन किसी को भी पता नहीं कि आरबीआई की सिक्योरिटी 5,000 रुपये में मैं खरीद सकता हूँ. तो फाइनेंशियल लिटरेसी गवर्नमेंट को उसमें इन्वेस्ट ही नहीं करना है. तो आई थिंक फाइनेंशियल लिटरेसी गवर्नमेंट को खुद को इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए. और टैक्स ऑप्स का मेरे हिसाब से तो कोई इतना इम्पैक्ट नहीं पड़ेगा, लेकिन इंडिविजुअल्स के लिए अगर हमको डिस्पोजेबल इनकम बढ़ानी है तो मेरे ख्याल से इंटरेस्ट रेट रिस्क जो आज की तारीख में इंडिविजुअल्स के पास है उसको थोड़ा हटा के इंस्टीट्यूशंस के पास लेके जाना चाहिए.
Right. I'll want to end this panel with one bonus question to Atul because he's the financial advisor to a lot of people. Atul, one of the very interesting points made by one of the previous speakers, and that was an advice to the common investor, is that don't focus on just returns, focus on your goals. आपने बेटी की शादी करानी है, बच्चे को बाहर पढ़ाना है, गाड़ी लेना है, बड़ा घर लेना है, जो भी है, आप उस पे फोकस कीजिए, आप रिटर्न्स पे मत फोकस, बिकॉज दैट इज टैंजिबल एंड रिटर्न्स कैन कीप वेरिंग. सो व्हाट इज योर टेक ऑन दैट?
नहीं, बिल्कुल. देखिए, मैं एक ऐसे सबब से आता हूँ, मैं विले पार्ला में रहता हूँ. वहाँ पे आप देखिए कि बच्चा पैदा होते ही बाप घर खरीद